Hi, everyone. It's Lynn from DevineCentral, and this is video number 2 in my Kids in Tarot series. Today, I'm excited to introduce you to Theresa Reed from thetarotlady.com. Theresa is a nationally renowned tarot reader and coach. She's a popular podcaster with several shows that are, well, everywhere these days. She's a blogger and an author of many articles and books on tarot and astrology. And she's the co-creator of a couple of tarot decks, one of which is Tarot for Kids. So I'll make sure that I put in the description below all the ways to find her materials and her products. And here we go. Theresa, I am so glad to have you here today. Thank you for coming.
Lynn, I'm so happy to be here. Thank you for inviting me.
There's I've been a fan of yours for so long. I'm sure that I discovered you through Google. I found your blog and I actually memorized your card by card series by heart, and then just kept following you from there. I have actually downloaded in bulk a lot of your Tarot Bites podcasts and listened to them on the road over and over while I am driving to fairs and festivals, which is my thing. So it's just great to be able to talk to you one-on-one. Today, I want to talk to you about kids. But before I do, I want to share a really quick story with you about my how I first got started with kids.
Mhm.
I bought my first tarot deck, by the way, in 1980, so I'm showing my age. But and then of course I dabbled for decades. But it wasn't until 2016 that I got really serious about tarot. I hired a coach. I don't know what he saw in me, but it was something because he dragged me kicking and screaming to the private party circuit, which was his big thing. And my very first private party was a garden party in the backyard of this beautiful house on the Mississippi River in Minneapolis. And this woman walked up to me with a 9-year-old little girl with a cast on her arm. And she plopped her down in the chair in front of me and said, "My daughter wants to know if she's going to make the gymnastics team this fall." And, I looked at this kid with this cast. It was the middle of August. School starts in 2 weeks. I'm thinking she needed somebody to be the fall guy, and it was going to be me. And I kind of wanted to take her out back and beat the pulp out of her. But what I did was I had the little girl lay out 2 rows of cards in front of her. And I said, the first row is what your year is going to be like if you make it on the team. And the second row is what is your year going to be like if you don't? And you know what? I didn't have to read anything. She just took that story and went right along with it, and it was amazing. And I felt like, well, I was hoping that I had given her something to go on either way. I'd prepared her, but she wasn't the only kid I read that day. I read a lot of tender age kids that day. Everyone's parents put them in front of me, but I learned that you don't read kids; they read you. And
Mhm.
it was amazing, and ever since then, every time people, debunk kids in tarot, it's, oh, I step up because it's really amazing. So I'm doing this series, and so I'm real excited about it, and I've already recorded a couple of pieces. I am working with a just turned 8-year-old. She's kind of
Ah,
the star of my series, and is she a mess? She is going to be so much fun, and she's going to be a heck of a reader when she gets older. I can tell already. So, my first question for you is, what initially inspired you to create a deck for kids in the first place? I mean, was it personal experiences that sparked that idea, or was it your kids? Or tell me a little bit about that.
well, first of all, I love your story. I just have to tell you that
Oh,
because
thanks.
I think kids are so amazingly intuitive and they're really into this sort of thing. And the reason why I got inspired to do the deck actually is the publisher approached me and
Oh,
they asked me, "What do you think about a tarot deck for children?" And I said, "Well, that's brilliant. There's nothing out there for kids." And I mean, I got into tarot also. My first deck I bought was 1980. So, not afraid to give my age away here, but I was,
Do you remember what your first deck was?
yes, it was the Marseille's deck.
And mine was a Morgan Greer first edition, and I still have
Wow.
it.
Oh, I don't have my old decks because, I was a little more cavalier with them. And
Yeah,
that was my first deck. And it was a very hard deck to write, to work with for your
sure.
first deck. A couple months later, I ended up with a Rider-Waite Smith deck. And then, I found that was a lot more appealing to me because I'm a very visual person. So when Sounds True approached me and said, "What do you think about a tarot deck for kids?" I'm like, "Well, that makes sense because there's nothing like that." Even though I wasn't a kid, I was a teenager when I got into tarot. As a mother, my kids were always fiddling around with my tarot cards. Why shouldn't they have a deck of their own, right? And
Right.
I would have many people too, just like you, who would bring their children in for a reading. And so I was really good at reading for children, or with them would probably be a better way of describing it. And one of the things I think when I was talking to the publishers, adult decks are too adult. I mean, they got naked men and women on it. Not that there's anything wrong with that. They got
Explicitly naked on
yeah,
some.
they got yes, and they have concepts like the Hierophant. What does that mean? And
Right.
so we started noodling around with the idea, and then I said, "Yeah, I definitely want to do this. I think I could write it." And so as we put the book and deck together, we hired an amazing artist, Kaylee Whitman.
Hmm.
So good. And we really went to work to create a deck that was also had lots of representation. So every young child could see themselves in the deck. And when I wrote the book, the one thing I said is I'm not dumbing this down for children, even though I'm changing some things, because children are not dumb. Children are so smart, they're so intuitive, and I believe they can learn things like reversals and all of that. So we're going to make this like a regular
Wow.
deck, but really
Never thought
simple.
about kids in
Yeah.
reversals. There's an idea.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, think about that. They hang upside down from monkey bars. Of course, they're comfortable with reversals. So that
Yeah.
was the concept behind it, and the deck turned out really well. It's sold like gangbusters, and so obviously there is
There's a need. There's a
interest.
call for it, isn't there? Yeah.
Yeah, but you know what's interesting too? The deck also appeals to people who are young at heart, or who want a gentle deck, or who are doing
Yeah.
inner child work. So it actually turned out to be bigger than just a kid's deck, which I didn't anticipate. And that was kind of a lovely surprise.
Yeah, that's fun. I'm curious about kids of different ages and how they approach tarot. So, like for example, I wonder how the difference is between like how the younger kids approach it, like 7 to 10, versus the older kids, the tweeners, like or 10 or 11 to like 14. And what do you think about that? And or have you seen how they approach it differently? And then what do you think is a good age to introduce kids to tarot?
I think any age is fine, personally, to introduce kids to tarot. If they show an interest in mystical things, by all means, let them get a tarot deck in their hands and begin to really tap into that. So what I found with much more younger groups, they tend to first of all really want to get involved. I mean, they are the generation, they're learning, not generation, but you know what I mean. They're from that age group. They've just learned to read. A lot of them, especially the real younger ones, around 5, 6, 7.
Hmm.
They've graduated from picture books. They're very visual. They see those pictures, they want to get involved. So I find a lot of times when you read for very young children, you're reading with them, and they're
Right.
talking about the things they see in those cards and what they think it means. When you get children who are a little bit older, they're really now wanting to listen to see what you have to say. And they usually have really well formulated questions, because by the
Yes.
time you're like 12, 13, 14, now you're starting to think about things like romance, or maybe you're having trouble with a friend at school, or there's a big test coming up, or maybe your parents are, going through a divorce and you don't know how to handle it. You are then at an age where you're very, not that younger kids aren't cognizant, they are,
Yeah.
but that age they come with the questions. And so it's different.
One of my dearest friends still in Minneapolis. We were talking yesterday on a podcast, and I asked her about, she has a grandson, and I said, how does it differ? What are the questions? How do the questions, I should say, differ from when he was 6 and 7 to now that he's like 14 and 15? And she said, well, before, there were things that he wanted to know, but now she said he wants to know if he's going to get a car. He wants to know if he's
Mhm.
going to pass the test. So yeah, same thing. That's really fun. You
Yeah,
know,
and then when
yeah.
you get to teenagers, I also wanted to add,
Mhm.
when they are like 15 and above, well, suddenly they've got some real life decisions like college, or, maybe they're getting into situations with a partner and they need guidance on. So then the questions get really deep and heavy at that age, and that's
Right.
very interesting.
Yeah, I just think kids are amazing. They seem to have such a natural sixth sense.
Hmm.
And eh, so help me out with this. What are some of the fun ways that we can help them use that intuition that they have to explore tarot? Do you have any like exercises or things
Hmm.
that they might be able to do
Well,
at
first of
various
all,
ages?
we're all intuitive, and children are incredibly intuitive because they haven't gone through life experiences to color their thinking. So they're feeling things, and if we encourage them to trust those feelings, we're really doing them a solid. I mean, I was lucky I grew up in a household that was my mother was a psychic, my grandmother was a psychic, my other grandmother was superstitious, prayed to all the gods. So we always had this mystical side, and so there was never any stigma about anything with intuition. And I'm really fortunate that I had that upbringing. And I think that is something that we have to do with our children. What do you feel? Why do you feel that? What's going on there? When we allow them to have those feelings and to trust them, we're really setting them up for success. Like, for example, one very, very simple thing, and it's not even an exercise, is if a child doesn't want to hug a relative because they don't like them, don't make them do that. Don't make them
Right.
do that. It's okay. All right, you're not feeling it. I'm going to honor that. So we have to let kids feel what they're feeling, and they've got to honor their boundaries and their instincts. Now, as far as exercises, first of all, tarot is the perfect way to get children honoring their intuition
Right.
because they can like think of an issue, they can pull a card, they can look at that card and start, jotting down or maybe talking about what they're feeling that card means for their question. So that is a perfect way to get children to develop their intuition, get a tarot deck in their hands.
Right.
I also recommend journaling for kids. Write down your feelings, write down your dreams.
See, that would be great yeah, especially for the tweeners and the teens, the older ones.
Yes.
I don't know as much about the younger ones. Do the younger ones do that? Can you get a 8-year-old to sit down and write? Well, maybe, I guess
Yes,
it's,
you can.
yeah,
And get
that's
them
great.
get them to write a story about what they
Yeah.
see in that card. Use your imagination,
Yep.
or just getting them to talk about it. So many parents don't listen to their kids when they talk. In fact, my daughter's grown, but every once in a while she accuses me of tuning her out. I'm like, oh, guilty as charged. But
No
if we
kidding.
listen to them and just
Yeah.
listen to what they're feeling, I mean, that is great. And I do think for especially older children, though, journaling is a great way to get in touch with their intuition.
I
You know,
agree.
I yeah, I just released a tarot journal last year, the Wiser Tarot Journal, which is it's got stickers and everything.
I saw the journal
Especially,
in your
yeah,
inventory of growing inventory. That is amazing.
yes. I
You
mean,
know,
that would be a great gift to a teenager who's really starting to become a budding psychic.
right. So I'm working with kids now, and I'm just having a ball. But one of the things, and I know you can address this too, is one of the things I think is the greatest thing about tarot is it's a tool that
Yep.
helps them develop as they grow. So things like emotional intelligence and developing their creativity, their decision making skills, their problem solving
Hmm.
skills. But more than anything, for me, it's empathy.
Hmm.
Empathy, because you sit down and you teach an 8-year-old to read tarot, and then she's going to start reading for her friends, right? But you know how girls are. My mom used to say, "Have all boys." She said, she said girls are cunning and conniving and backstabbing from the age of 4.
Oh
But
my gosh.
and my mom had 4 kids, I have 3 boys, but it's funny because girls can be so mean to each other, in that well, even 7 to grade school up, they can really be mean. So one of the things I think is great about tarot, and I saw this with a different teenager, was it can how they find a way, they try to cultivate in their mind a way to convey compassion to somebody in a reading, when
Hmm.
they see something bad, they see the devil come up, and instead of just saying, oh, they actually try to soften it and stuff. So it almost teaches empathy.
Yes, absolutely. I think tarot can be a great tool for that. I mean, it's a tool for helping kids to understand maybe how others feel, but also one of the ways that it can really be used to, cultivate empathy and compassion is when children are going through something. if they have a way to articulate their feelings, they tend to then really start to see how other people feel too. Uh,
Absolutely.
I just wrote a book too called The Cards You're Dealt: How to Deal When Life Gets Real, a tarot guidebook. And it's all about grief and loss and doing tarot readings for that. And there is a section in there about children. And one of the things that children have a hard time with the empathy, compassion, and like the grief, we
Mhm.
don't give them permission to talk about those things. We're like, oh, get over it, or oh, we just don't understand that they're going
Yeah.
through these things. So we're right there when we cut them off. We're telling them that I don't have compassion or empathy because you're grieving and you're a kid and you don't understand that. So one of the exercises I recommend for parents, if you've gone through any kind of a loss, you sit down with your child and you have them pick the card face up that really matches how they're feeling. Now let's
Right.
talk about that. Now here I'm gonna, you know what, I'm gonna go pick a card. This is how I'm feeling. Now we're both
Right.
having a conversation. It's amazing. And that will help them to develop compassion and empathy, including self-compassion, which is so important.
And also, I think that not just for the child, but what a great tool for a parent who is
Mhm.
trying to get through to a kid and not knowing, not being able to pull out of that child what's going on with them. And just a great way to open up. And of course, they how the police, when they talk to abused children, they use dolls and they use
Mhm.
situations and crayons and draw. It's just another tool for a parent. And I think an interesting one, because if the parent is learning, and most of them do, if they don't already have tarot in the home, I
Mhm.
I think that they're learning tarot alongside their kid who picked it up somewhere and showed an interest, and they went, "Okay." So, anyway, so tell me about the biggest challenges that you faced creating a deck for kids. Was it just really that simple, or did you have some issues that you had to deal with?
It
What were
actually
the
came together. It came together very quickly. It put myself in the mind of a kid. And I'm good at doing that mostly because my kids think I'm immature.
Yeah,
But but
funny.
I remember what it was like being a child. I remember it very vividly. The things that were important to me, the things, and one of the things I hated was being talked down to. That's why again, when I came to writing the book, I'm like, kids are smart, and so the whole thing actually came together pretty seamlessly and easy. The artist Kaylee Whitman was amazing to work with. She understood the vision. She really, really was just her output was incredibly fast. And she also really understood that we needed to make sure, again, that every child could see themselves in this deck. So she went to town on that, and I really loved that. So it was actually one of the easiest projects I've done.
That's
And
so good.
I think it is because though I was able to put myself in a child's shoes and think about what kind of information, issues, what things they're going to really find appealing.
Well, speaking of putting yourself in a child's shoes, how popular has your coloring book been? It's it's everywhere, and I see it everywhere. I was just at a psychic fair last weekend, and down here in the valley, we're down here in the far South Texas,
Mhm.
and somebody had their kids there with them, and they were quietly sitting in the corner. And one of them had the book, and I went, "No way." I told them,
Yeah.
I said I was having an interview with you. I think I've purchased 4 of them so far for Christmas gifts and stuff, but, it's the adults that love them, but, that's the kid in you coming out. I thought about
Yes.
that when I saw when it first came out. I thought that was great. So, as I said, I have the kind of the star of my, Tarot and Kids series here. Her name is Annabelle, and she is the 8-year-old daughter of my realtor, and, I had mentioned that I read tarot, and she said that, "Oh, I just bought my daughter her for a deck," and
Ooh.
we've sat down together and we've gone through the cards, and I read out of the little white book, and then we tried to lay them out, and then that was it. That's as far as we got because we couldn't figure it out. And so one of the companion pieces I have for this series that will be in my Etsy shop by the time this whole thing is up is I'm doing a little white book for kids, and it's just it's a brief little, 1 or 2 or 3 sentence of what the card means, but
Yep.
then an example. And so for example, for the 3 of Swords, I'm using, it's a rainy day. And and the
Mm.
day it's really sad, but it's not a person that's sad. It's the day that's sad because it's raining and you can't go out and play today. It's one of those things. So it gives them ideas of how they can use and honestly, I think I'm doing it more for the parent than I am for the kid
Yes.
because then the parent can sit down with the kid and explain what the Hierophant really, what is that card. So I think that's
Yeah.
going to help. But anyway, so for Annabelle, and I'm working with her. And by the way, I have 3 segments of this thing with her. The first one I've already recorded. I sat her down with the camera, of course, hands and voice only, right? But I
Mhm.
sat her down in front of the camera. I had put her deck in front of her, and I said, I want you to tune these over one at a time. Create 2 piles. I want you to have one pile of the cards you like, one pile of the cards you don't like, and I want to know why. And I'm
Mm.
telling you, I don't know where to cut this thing off because it's 40 minutes of absolute sheer entertainment. I'm really kind of excited, but I also am going to be the next on Monday. We're going to be doing a piece on storytelling, where we're going to lay out
Ooh.
some cards and do some storytelling. Do you have any particular maybe a spread or something that I would do for somebody of tender age like that? I mean, I'm thinking no more than 3, obviously,
Yep.
but even one, in some cases. But I was just wondering, what your thoughts were on something like that that kids can understand.
Well, first of all, I always love the card for the day. Having them pick one every morning as kind of like a little guidepost, like how will my day go? And then pick it, and then they can use that as guidance and wisdom for the day. That's such a simple spread to do. It's also a great way to learn tarot. That's how many of us learned.
Yeah,
I also think the past, present, future spread, it's a classic. It's one they're going to find in every books. And that way they
yeah,
can also play around with the idea of storytelling. The past, the present, the future, but I like to call it for children the beginning, the middle, and the end.
something that
Use
simple.
it, yeah,
Yeah,
something that go simple. And actually for adults too, the simpler the better. Sometimes as adults we overcomplicate our tarot or our astrology for that reason, and we miss the bigger picture. So
right.
keep it simple, beginning,
Yeah.
middle, end.
So, what words of encouragement do you have for parents that are a little hesitant about introducing their kids to tarot at all? I mean, and this is probably going to be more for parents that where their child learned about tarot outside of the home, because if their parent was if there was tarot reading in the home, that wouldn't be an issue, right? So,
Right.
what would you tell somebody that is kind of afraid of where that might go?
Oh, I can totally understand that. I mean, I know that some parents, depending on their belief structures growing up or whatever, some people might be a little bit spooked about tarot. There's a lot of misinformation about it. So, the first thing I would say for the parents, there's nothing scary about tarot. But the second thing is, I would advise them to get educated about tarot. Read the blogs, go on TikTok. I have a book called Tarot No Questions Asked that parents might
Yep,
find to be very helpful.
love that
you
book.
know, that is what they can do. Get a little education about it. Keep an open mind. Again, one of the things I was very fortunate about, my parents didn't care. They were busy. I'm a Gen Xer. You know what that's like. The
Yeah,
parents were just so uninvolved. So I was able to do my tarot lessons and astrology lessons and study my heart to my heart's content
yeah.
without any interference. And I think for parents, they have to understand that these are things that can help the child. It can
Mhm.
help them develop their intuition, their confidence, their decision making. And again, they should just get as much education as possible and then really give the child room to explore it on their own. They might love it, they might not. I mean,
Right,
it might be a passing fancy, but it's really important to just keep an open mind
right.
and not make assumptions about tarot. There's nothing evil about it. It's great fun.
Any last words of wisdom or advice for these parents
The
of
most
teaching?
important thing is never, ever, ever talk down to your children. Don't assume they don't know things. Allow them to honor their intuition. Don't poo poo that. Don't poo poo those dreams. Really treat your children with respect. And you know what? You'll get the respect back.
Yeah, and you know what? That's even regardless of tarot. I think
Exactly.
that's excellent advice. So before we go, can you share with us what you're currently working on right now? Because I know you're working on a new book, right? Can you
I
share it
am
yet?
working. I cannot share anything. I just
Oh,
began working on the new book.
oh
It will
no,
be
we have to
coming out in
wait.
20, oh yeah, it'll be coming out in 2026. Well, I've got a moon in Scorpio and everything I do has to be done under on the down low. I don't even like telling people I'm working on a book really,
Oh,
but I am I am working on a book, and so that is something that's going to be consuming a lot of my time between now and next year. And it will be out in 2026 and I'll be able to say more sometime next year.
I'm so glad that you keep writing. You have to keep writing because everything you write, it's just like, it's just the next book is better than the last book. I mean, you just keep getting better and better. I'm telling you, Teresa, it's amazing. So where you got your finger in a lot of pies. Why don't
Mhm.
you share with everybody? I'm going to put everything down below so that people have
Perfect.
access. But where's the best place? I love your listen. I love your podcast, and you have Astro bites as well as tarot bites,
Mhm.
and I'm like you. I believe in giving people bite-sized information
Yep.
because they can't process a whole lot of information at one time. I'd rather give somebody one little piece and let them contemplate that, give them something concrete. And so that's why I love your tarot bites. But there's a lot of different places to find them. I would imagine the best is going to be, well, I don't know. What is the best place to find those?
Best place to find everything is all at my website, thetarotlady.com. So if you go there, it'll have links to everything that you want to find. The
That's
podcast, the
perfect.
podcasts are discontinued, but every once in a while I put up
Oh,
a surprise episode.
do you?
If I just don't have time, I'm so busy writing. But that gives you links to everything, and it also
Yeah.
gives you links to my social media world. I'm most active on social media on Instagram and also Threads. Threads is my favorite. I love Threads.
I have
So those
not
are places.
discovered that yet.
Oh my God, I love
Well,
Threads.
I'm embarrassed to say that when I was in Minneapolis, because I lived there for 34 years, and when I lived there, I was blessed with being in the corporate world in a position where I didn't have to rely on a lot of networking to do what I did to be successful. So I shunned social media. And I mean, I still can't even figure out how to work my own Facebook page. I got to call people to, and I'll tell you what's and I'm showing my age now. What's really bad is here I was, my second psychic fair in a row down here, and I had to hand somebody else my phone to figure out how to bring up the QR code on Cash App for me so that I could charge them. Oh God, it's social media. It's just getting. I need a nice 14-year-old boy to come over here and help me figure out all my social media. They know everything.
Let me tell you something. Kids do know this stuff inside and out. And that shows you again how smart they are.
Yes, they do.
I'm pretty adept at it, and I actually do social media and all of that technology stuff better than my children
Yeah.
because I was determined that I'm going to learn this stuff and not be that person standing at the checkout line who can't figure out how to make a payment. So I'm always studying technology. But
Yeah.
yes, kids, they're so smart. They know all this stuff.
I
They know
know.
what's cool, what's in, what's not. I
It's
mean,
amazing.
and none of them are on Facebook.
No, they're not. And unfortunately, I have a couple. Well, people write to me and then I find it, like 3 months later. It's and then you can't find it again. I just don't get it. I just don't understand it. I think once I hit 50, all of a sudden the technical brain cells just started to disintegrate and it just gets worse the older I get. Well, Teresa, I want to thank you very much for being here today. Thanks so much for being a part of this. I'm real excited about it. And I in my podcast I mentioned your name this week, or that you were going to be coming on this week, and somebody actually wrote back and said, Theresa Reed, oh no,
Oh,
when? You have to tell me when. And yeah, so you're out there. Everybody knows who you are, and we're waiting for everything that you write and to come out. So thank
that's so
you again.
sweet.
You take care, and we'll talk to the rest of you later. Bye.